The first time I saw Nathaniel Hayes, it felt like the air around me cracked open. I was standing behind the counter at Maple and Ink, a quiet little bookstore on Charleston's East End. The day had been uneventful, just the sound of flipping pages and coffee brewing, until he walked in, rain dripping off his leather jacket, eyes scanning the shelves like he already knew what he was looking for. He was tall, late 30s maybe, with dark hair that curled slightly at the edges and eyes so piercing they seemed to know secrets I hadn't even told myself yet. He gave a brief smile when our eyes met, the kind of smile that doesn't warm you, it scorches. "Got anything worth getting lost in?" he asked, his voice low and smooth like velvet soaked in bourbon. I should have just handed him a book and kept it simple, but something in the way he asked made me feel like the answer mattered. So I gave him the one I always turned to when I didn't know what to say, The Great Gatsby. He took it in his hands like it was made of glass, read the back slowly, then looked at me again. "Classic," he murmured. "Tragic, but beautiful." And that's how it started. Nathaniel came in once a week at first, then every few days. Then suddenly he was there nearly every afternoon, sometimes buying a book, sometimes just talking, always leaving behind a trail of tension and charm like perfume in the air. I was 23, fresh out of college, with a creative writing degree and 1,000 ideas, but no real plan. I lived in a one-bedroom apartment above a bakery and worked at the bookstore to keep the lights on while I tried to finish my first novel. Nathaniel was a mystery from the start. He never talked about his job, or where he lived, or whether he had family. But he always asked about me, my stories, my dreams, what kept me awake at night. He made me feel like I was the only thing in the world worth paying attention to. It was addictive. When he finally asked me out for coffee, I said yes before he could even finish the sentence. We went to a small cafe by the harbor. It was raining again, soft and steady, like the sky was holding its breath. He asked me about my favorite author. I said Sylvia Plath. He smiled like that made perfect sense. I asked him what he did for a living. He paused. "Consulting," he said finally. "Boring stuff. You'd hate it." I laughed, but something in the way he said it stuck in my chest. Still, I didn't ask more. I didn't want to ruin the spell. We began seeing each other constantly. Dinners that turned into midnight walks. Conversations that danced between poetry and pain. He quoted Rilke and Bukowski, knew the names of every constellation in the sky, and could make silence feel like the most intimate language in the world. When he touched me, it felt like the world stopped spinning just for us. But love that intense never stays gentle. The first time he disappeared, it was for 2 days. No calls. No texts. When he came back, he didn't offer an explanation. Just kissed me so deeply I forgot to ask. I told myself he was busy, that he needed space, that he was complicated, and complicated people needed more patience, not pressure. Then it happened again. And again. One night, I stayed up until 3 a.m., staring at my phone, heart pounding with every shadow that crossed my window. When he finally showed up, he looked tired, distant. I asked him where he'd been. He smiled and said, "Just needed to clear my head." I knew I should walk away, that something about him was fractured. But I'd fallen so deeply into him that I couldn't tell where I ended and he began. My friends warned me. My sister begged me to be careful. But they didn't know him the way I did. They didn't see the tender way he held my hand when I talked about my childhood. They didn't hear the way he said my name like it was a prayer. And then came the night that changed everything. It was a Friday, late October. We had plans to meet at his place. I brought over a bottle of wine and one of my short stories printed and stapled, the first one I'd written in months. He wasn't home. I waited in my car for an hour, called him 3 times, no answer. On instinct, or maybe desperation, I drove around the corner and parked where I could see his building. That's when I saw her. A woman, tall, elegant, maybe in her 30s, with dark red lips and a laugh that sliced through the night. She was standing in front of Nathaniel's building. And then he walked out the door and wrapped his arms around her. Not like a friend, not like a stranger, but like someone he missed, someone he knew. I didn't cry. I just drove. For 2 days, I didn't speak. I didn't eat. I lay on the floor of my apartment staring at the ceiling, asking myself how I let it get this far. How I let someone so unknowable become my entire world. When he finally texted, "Hey, sorry about the other night.
Can I see you?"
I felt something snap. I said yes. Not because I forgave him, but because I needed answers. When I got to his place, he opened the door like nothing had happened. Kissed my cheek.
Poured me wine.
Asked about my writing. I didn't play along. I handed him the printed story I'd brought the night he stood me up. "It's called Undoing," I said. "Want to read it?" He took it with a grin, sat down, and began to read. As his eyes moved across the page, his expression shifted. Halfway through, he stopped. "You wrote about me," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "I wrote about the version of me that loved someone like you." There was silence. Then, finally, he said, "I never meant to hurt you." But he had. And what hurt the most wasn't the lies or the other woman. It was how much of myself I'd given up for someone who never gave all of himself to me. I left without another word. The healing didn't come fast. I cried in grocery store parking lots. I deleted his number and re-downloaded it from memory more than once. I reread the texts he sent like they were old poems. But I started writing again. Really writing. About heartbreak. About love that suffocates. About women who lose themselves and fight their way back. And little by little, I found her again. The woman who once believed her voice mattered. Nathaniel Hayes never apologized again. Never tried to explain. Maybe he knew I wouldn't listen. And maybe, for once, he was right. Because by then I understood the truth I'd been too scared to face. Loving him was my undoing. But it was also the beginning of everything I was meant to become.